Living my bucolic life, we every city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and some spin, and move the horses into the barn. Then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful white houses. The view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.
Okay, so this is my waistband piece. There's one of them. And I'm going to be using this waistband interfacing. It's a fusible. And so the way that I'm going to be putting this on is first I need to make sure I know exactly where the midpoint here is. So I'm actually going to take the pattern and everything off before I mark anything. And go over to my iron, fold this in half and press it so that I have a crease where my midpoint is. Now I'm going to put on my interfacing. So first I'm going to cut, and I bought this on the Bias Bespoke website. They have it at the 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐞 website. They've got it, take your pick. Just look up waistband interfacing. Anyhow, it has this center perforated area, and I'm going to actually place it this way because it's easier to see. And place it with the fusible side down so that my little perforated area is lining up where that center fold crease is that I just made. Okay, I'm going to go back to my ironing board, and this is very lightweight and I don't want to risk destroying it. So I am going to be using a press cloth, a damp press cloth on top of this with a steam iron, just to press it on nicely, and then flip it over and press it again from the other side. Okay, so I have it ironed on, and this is what it looks like. Now my interfacing is wider than my waistband, and now that it is on there, I can just come back and trim it up so it's nice and even with the edges. In a perfect world, it would be nicer if I had actually thought ahead and cut my waistband to match my interfacing, but it's not going to really matter. The main thing I wanted to do is make sure that this was in the middle so that when I fold my waistband, it's going to want to fold in the right place. If I had this off center, it would be wanting to fold in the wrong place. So this is the crucial part here. So I'm going to go ahead and trim my excess interfacing off the sides. Okay, so on this waistband there's a side with points and a side that's flat. And on this pattern, the side with points is going to be the part that overlaps on top. And so I want to make sure that because this is a lapped zipper and this is going this way, that the pointy side is sewn to this side. Okay, so when I'm making my marks on my pattern piece, all of these, side placement marks and things like that, that's going to be on this side. So if I had done it so that my lap was going this way, this is more of a lap for a right-handed person, this is more of a lap for a left-handed person, I would be doing the opposite side. But because I'm going to be lapping it this way, I'm putting my marks on this side. So I have a mark for center back on each side. I have my side seams and my center front seam. Okay, so the center back is this point where the edge of the zipper is. Okay, because that's what lines up with this center seam. So I want to make sure my center back point, stick a pin through there, so that this center back point right here lines up with the very edge of the fabric right here. So go ahead and stick that in. Okay, then moving around, I am going to line up my side seam, which should be this point here, with my side seam. Like that. Same thing, moving around and marking my center front. Now, I did not actually mark my center front before, so what I'm going to do is fold this in half, at least these last, from the point of these last two darts, and come over here, and this point is my center front, where that little crease I just made is. So I'm going to line up that mark with that crease. And again, back to the center back. Now remember, the center back is that point where it overlaps. So on this side, it's the fold line that we pressed in. That's the center back. Okay? So there I have my center back. So now I can just kind of split the difference, pin in between all of these, and then I'm going to sew all the way around here at a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Alright, so the waistband is sewn on now, and the next step is to trim this seam up here. I wanted to make one little comment. You know, I used a new tape to take the place of my stay stitching on this, and I don't feel like this was a really good example of a project to try it out on, because it is a bias cut tape with the tape on it. It would do better to try it out on something that was very curved, and this was not. So I'm going to wait to give any review or anything on this tape until after I've used it. I'll probably use it on a blouse or something. But we're just going to put that aside for right now. And it's time to go ahead and trim it. Now the directions want you just to cut the whole thing at a 1/4 inch. I'm going to do it slightly different. I'm going to grade it a bit. So the garment piece that has all of the darts and everything on it, I'm going to cut that down to a 1/4 inch. But the waistband part that has the interfacing on it, I'm going to cut that to about 3/8 so it's staggered. And then when I'm sewing this piece on, this one will be at 5/8. So that way it'll go 1/4 inch, 3/8, 5/8, and that staggering is what's going to help that waistband be nice and flat instead of a big drop-off ledge, which I don't like. So I'm going to go ahead, finish trimming this all the way around. Alright, so I have graded it and pressed this seam so that the seam allowance is facing up all the way around. And now what I need to do is sew the edges here. So what I'm doing is, because I use this interfacing that has a perforation, that's where I'm folding it. It just works easily that way. So I'm folding it over at the perforated part. If you don't have perforations, it's just the center, okay? So what I need to do right now is note where, this is where my seam is, okay? And just kind of feeling it with my thumb on this side. I'm just going to put a little dot there. I know you can't see it because it's black on black, but or here. There. I'm just going to put a little dot there so I can see it on this side. So what I'm going to have to do is sew straight down at 5/8 this way and turn and sew in to this point. And I want to stop right where this intersection right here is, where the zipper meets, okay? So I'm just going to make that L on this side. Put a little clip right there. And on the pointy side, folding it so the points, there, folding it so the points are lined up. And it's a little bit different on this side. And actually, it's what you have to do is fold the end up on this side, all right? Now, I want to make sure when I fold it up that the folded part is slightly, ever so slightly lower than where my seam is. You know, maybe about a 1/16 of an inch lower. And that's just so it will cover up all that stitching on the other side. So I'm going to stick a little clip right there to hold it. And I need to, see, it's sticking out a little further, and I think that's because my placement, because I did the lap zipper, is slightly different than what the pattern called for, but that is not a problem at all. So what I'm going to do is draw my line, and I want a point to end right here where that intersection is going to be. So, oh, actually it works out fine. So 5/8 line is right there, and a 5/8 line is right here. Okay, so I'm going to start up here, come to this point, pivot, and come to here. You know, making sure that that stays folded where I want it. So I'm going to go make those 2 seams. Alright, so now I need to trim this, and I know it's black on black, so sorry about that. So I'm trimming one side slightly staggered again than the other. So, you know, more of an 1/8, more of a 1/4. And on this side, I'm just going to trim them both about a 1/4 inch in, and then take off some of that bulk at the tip. Let's go ahead and flip this right side out and see how it's going to look. Okay, so and then on the bottom, I'm also going to be trimming this corner down here. And I should be able to pop this out and make a little rectangle that is sticking out. Get my chopstick. Again, I like my chopstick because it's rounded, so it's not going to want to poke through anything. Just, you know how that goes. It's just handy. But sometimes you just need a straight pin to pull out the little pieces here. So having that interfacing on there makes it a little thick, so it's being a bit obstinate. So just give me one more moment here. Okay, so I have my little rectangle on this side and my little pointy part on this side. And now I'm going to turn my whole skirt inside out and just carefully fold down, push under, and pin my waistband all the way around. And again, I'm going to be doing that so it just barely covers that stitching line, like that. Now when I'm pinning it, I'm actually going to be pinning it, ooh, I just stabbed myself, pinning it on the back, okay? So my pin's over here, but I'm looking over here. Don't stab yourself like I just did. Because when I sew it, I'm going to be looking at it from this side. So I want to be able to reach in. Actually, my pin should be going this direction. Excuse me. Because I want to be able to reach in and grab that pin as I sew. Just going to stick a little clip here to make sure that corner stays where I want it to as I get started. So. And then I will just be continuing around, doing the same thing. Folding it, and it's going to naturally want to fold up there at the right place, which is why I like this interfacing. And then putting the pin, so the little top part is towards the edge, pinning it down. Okay, so I have it pinned all the way around. Now the instructions actually call for you to hand stitch this down, and you can, you know. I'm just choosing to do it a little bit differently. So I'm going to come over to my machine, and instead of stitching in the ditch, I'm going to use my little edge tool and stitch, top stitch it just right here. This is the little top stitch foot I was mentioning. It just has a little guide here that'll line up into that groove. Help it keep level, especially when you're on a slightly uneven surface. So that's what I'm going to be putting on here. I'm grabbing my 2 back threads here when I'm getting started on this edge because I don't want them to shrink in and give me a little rat nest. So I'm going to take a couple stitches just to get her locked in. Back it up. And it's going to run that little springy blade part right into this ditch. Get a little further here. And one of the reasons I didn't want to, I might drop my awl, I didn't want to top stitch this is because this is kind of like a stretch duck type cloth, and that just would be a pain to hand stitch, honestly. So, I don't know if you can see. You know what, let me just do some more. Hold on a second. So this is what it looks like on the right side, and when I flip it over you can see that, hopefully you can see this black on black is tough, that it's catching. You know, I have everything nice and secured. But actually I got down to the end and I decided that I was going to wrap around and come back up and top stitch across the top of this band too, because I thought that would look nice. So I'm just going to finish this up, and the band then has a nice squared off edge like that. So this is the cute little vent in the back, and I need to start working on the hem. And I've decided that I want to use my hem facing tape, and in the black color I only have extra wide, so that is fine, you know, that makes it extra fancy. But what I need to do before I can fold it up and hem it is stitch my tape on. But I'm setting it so that my edge of my fabric is halfway through the tape. And on the edge, there's like this straight line that's going through the little round motifs. That's where I'm going to be running my seam, just down there. Alright, so now I have my lace sewn on halfway up, and remember when we were cutting out the pattern, the hem is supposed to be 1.5 inches tall, so the fabric part I need to make 1.5 inches. All right, so on my little guide, this is my 1.5 inch line right there. So I just went ahead and put a first little crease to start it there, but actually usually once I know that width, I can just kind of base the rest of my folds on here. So I can eyeball that's about 5/8 of an inch. And I'm just going to continue all the way around, putting about 5/8 of an inch below my lace and pressing it. So getting to this point where I'm under the pleat, because I shortened it so much, it's going to get a little bit tough to get this lace all the way up. I will fit under, but just barely. So what I'm going to do is when I get all the way under here where the first fold is, I'm actually going to clip my lace down so I can tuck it over the top of the fabric, okay? And so where it's going back and forth in the accordion style underneath here, it's just going to be the height of the fabric itself. And then once I get back over here to this final fold on this side, okay, that's the final fold here, I'll clip it again so it can peek back out. Alright, so I hope you can see this. What I have is my lace turned over, like I said I was, and then once I had it flipped over, so it's just over the edge of the fabric here, I went ahead and pressed this whole little plackety, pleaty area here, so it's nice and flat and I get the creases right. So of course with all of this I am doing this by hand, you know, as you do. The stitching is actually going to be a lot easier than what you would have to do on a waistband, because I only have to pick up a thread or so each time I come over here. Now this is obviously different since I don't have the edging, but on the lace, the traditional optimal length between stitches for hemming up is 3/8 of an inch in between each stitch. And that's usually, I didn't measure it this time, but that is usually the distance between the bumps. And it looks like it's about the same. Yeah, the top of each of these bumps is 3/8 of an inch apart. So I can just use that as a guide. and just on each top of bump or in between each one. Just make that my guide for picking stitches all the way around. All right, so this is our hemmed up bottom with the little pleat, and everything else is the full width of the tape. So now the very last step is I need to put a button up here. So the buttonhole is going to be on the pointy side, okay, and a button's going to go on the back. So I'm going to go find a button, jump on my buttonholer, and again, I do have another video explaining my buttonholer, which is a fabulous antique machine. And I'm going to go make that, sew my button on, and we're going to call it good. The neat thing about these buttonholers is if you have a buttonhole that has to carry a lot of weight, you can actually keep going around and around. I've gone up to 3 times around for something that needs a really sturdy buttonhole, but I'm going to add an extra loop down here at the base. So I started at one end, go all the way around, and put an extra loop at the bottom here to about there, because that's where the pull of that button is going to be. So lift this up all the way and pull it out here, clip my little strings. You can see it makes a perfect little buttonhole with rounded edges, so I love that. Anyhow, I'm going to go pop this open and sew on my button. See, here's the back. Again, it's perfect, and I'll be right back. So I have used my little chisel and block, which doubles as a clapper. One side I chonk on for my chisel, and the other side I press on, you know. Things can be two things. But anyway, I've got this pressed through, sliding my button through. It works very well. So now I just need to place my button on the back here. So I'm going to zip it up. And I want my button to carry the brunt of the tension from this point here. I don't want the top of the zipper to be pulling. So it's important to me that my button is in the right place. And so when you have your button closed, you're not actually going to sew it in the middle of the buttonhole. You're going to sew it more over here to the side, because that's where it's naturally going to want to pull to. So that is the point that I'm sewing my button on. We're going to make an X just for fun. And because my thread is doubled and is waxed, and it's actually a hand quilting thread to start with, just a few swipes in each hole is plenty. So now I can come back up to the top here. Instead of going all the way through, I'm just going to poke it out the side like that. Wrap it around a few times. Push my needle through that little short shank thing I just made when I was wrapping it around. Wants to catch in the button. Push it all the way through. And that is my knot. So I can just pop it off. So I should be able to button it, pull it over to the side, zip this up, have everything line up nicely. So this is her. I think that it's cute. You know, we've got our little darts and everything. Darts back here. This little button closure up top. This cute little pleaty vent in the back. So I'm going to get this in the mail off to Jessica, and we're just going to wait for the next step. So, ta-ta!
Living my bucolic life, free healthy city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and some spin, and lure the horses in to the barn. then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful white houses, the view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.